Today's episode was sponsored by Van Lanigh on behalf of her husband Alex. So thank you guys so much, and let's go ahead and get this bad boy up on the wall. That is upside down. I apologize. Here we go. Yeah. So here it is. Back here, it's a little out of frame. I apologize, but it's on the quilt, and I thank you, Van Lanigh. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I probably should have gotten some clarification on that, but if I'm saying it wrong, please let me know, and I will issue a retraction in the next video. I asked Alex if he had any special messages he wanted me to say, and he did, so let me grab the old phone. He said, they've been together for 10 years, and so they've created a number of funny moments for each other, and sponsoring my video is yet another one. I like that. Let that be a lesson to the rest of you. Willie makes a great anniversary gift. Aside from that message, Alex also wanted me to let you guys know that Van Lanigh is an artist, and so I looked up her stuff, and it is very, very cool. I have a lot of thoughts about it that are all very positive, but I'm also nervous about sharing my thoughts on other people's art because I'm always worried I'm going to compliment them, but compliment them in the wrong way, and they won't want to hear that because that happens to me all the time. So rather than saying stuff, I'm just going to show it to you, and you guys can see that it's awesome. Alex did not ask me to do this, but I've included a link to their website down below, so if you want to check out more, you absolutely should. I recommend it. It's very pretty. And with that out of the way, let's go ahead and start the episode. Hiya, nitwits, and welcome to Knitting Time with Willie. I'm your host, Willie Muse, joined as always by my co-host, Nitcolas. And about a week ago, my friend messaged our group chat letting us know about a new Christmas movie that was produced by none other than Sean Hannity. And if for some reason you don't know who Sean Hannity is, then one, I'm jealous, but two, I feel like the best way to describe him is to say that he's a conservative pundit who's kind of like what might have happened if a young Nathan Lane wished that he could be straight on a monkey's paw. And yeah, the second I knew this movie existed, I knew that this is what my next video was going to be about. Unfortunately, then I went to watch it and realized that making a video about it wasn't going to be as simple as I had hoped. Not only was it only available on a streaming service called Rumble, which I guess is like a conservative version of Twitch, that I now unfortunately have an account on, but it also cost $20 to buy, and for as much as I love hate watching stuff like this, I also do not feel good about directly handing money to the people who make it, because I tend to believe that those people are evil. That said, though, the holidays were coming up, and I didn't really have any other ideas for videos to get out before I went home, so I reluctantly decided to buy it. But please shame me in the comments below, I deserve it. It doesn't fully make up for what I did, but as my own personal form of atonement, I also donated $100 to abortion charities in Sean Hannity's name. I've included the link to the site I use below, so if you have some extra money and want to aid me in my attempts at karmic realignment, I encourage you to do the same. Even if everyone watching this donates, though, I still won't feel great about what I did. Although that said, I also can't say that I fully regret it either, because this movie was everything I was hoping it would be and then some. This is literally how it begins.
Merry Christmas, America. This is Sean Hannity. It's official. Hollywood has now canceled action star Mason Stone. Why, you ask? Because of a social media post. Why? He is pro-God, pro-military, pro-America.
And right off the bat, I want to tell this movie to go fuck itself. I don't know who Mason Stone is or what he did, but no, it's not official that he's been canceled. That's not something that can be official. Cancellation is a broad concept that doesn't really have a set definition. And frankly, people like Sean Hannity probably prefer it that way, because if it were more defined, they wouldn't be able to throw the word around with such reckless abandon. But yes, it's Christmas time, and someone named Mason Stone has been canceled. We don't really find out why until the next scene, but the plot of this movie doesn't really matter, so let's just jump ahead a little bit, shall we?
Welcome back to Channel 7 News. This brings us to our top story. It seems that Pativa's very own action star and hometown hero, Mason Stone, is caught between a stone and a hard place, and it seems even he can't get himself out of. Here's Julie Vincent with the Hollywood Hotline.
Okay, before we go on, I just want to stop right here and say that it's very funny to me that there's a prominent newscaster role in this movie, and it's not being filled by Sean Hannity. I guess even though he produced it, they could only get him on set for like 20 minutes. And some of you might actually recognize that newscaster. He's Jim Breuer, a former SNL comedian and current guy that people pretend to like because they agree with him. And he's just one of many famous conservative faces that fill out this cast. Along with him, there's also his fellow SNL alum Victoria Jackson, the dad from Smallville, whose name I don't know, the ghost of Eric Roberts, and according to IMDb, the voice of Mike Huckabee. I kind of get the sense that the goal here was to fill every role they possibly could with a right-leaning celebrity to try and make like your racist aunt's version of the Avengers. And if that is what they were going for, then they clearly ran out of conservatives. Like, I got the sense that Jim Brewer's co-anchor was also supposed to be a cameo, so I looked it up, and she's being played by a woman named Jacqueline Stapp, who is best known for being married to Scott Stapp, who is the lead singer of Creed. This is her only acting role.
That's right, Blake. Mason Stone may have started here at Pativa, but he became an international superstar, playing superheroes and mythic warriors like Silver Saturn and Numlock the Conqueror. But now Mason's career has taken a turn for the worst after he was caught on camera waving a loaded weapon in public and shouting offensive, threatening statements.
May God bless America, and may he protect our troops. USA! USA!
Okay, you know how I know that conservatives are in the wrong on this argument? It's because if anything they were saying about how stupid cancel culture is and how the snowflakes ruin people's lives over nothing was true, then they could have just used an actual example there. In the real world, nobody would get canceled for doing anything even remotely close to what they just showed. Frankly, they'd be more likely to get canceled for doing the exact opposite. And yes, I get that it's supposed to be satire, but it's not very good satire. Good satire acknowledges the truth of a situation and expands certain aspects of it to highlight a larger point. But this is just kind of nothing. If I had to guess at the point that they were trying to make here, it's that cancel culture has gotten so out of hand that people can have their lives ruined for saying things that to the people watching this movie are as innocuous as saying, I love pizza. But if that's what they were going for, then it really doesn't land. Honestly, I feel like having him say, I love pizza and getting canceled for that would probably be better satire, because at least that's not something that we've ever seen in the real world. People say God bless our troops all the time without consequence, and God bless America is pretty much our national catchphrase. Saying that this stuff would get you canceled doesn't work for me, because I know for a fact that it wouldn't. Granted, if I saw a celebrity I liked in this exact video, I probably would reconsider how I felt about them, but that's mostly because chanting USA, USA like that makes them look really stupid. And honestly, even if you just didn't consider the real world, this joke still wouldn't really work, because it doesn't make sense within the confines of the world the movie establishes either. If the point being made here is that cancel culture is so out of hand that people are being canceled for stupid things, then show people being canceled for stupid things. Have someone say Merry Christmas and then the cops show up. Or have someone say God bless you to a sneezing person and then the sneezing person slaps them. Show it being the problem that you say it is, because right now, it really seems like the only person being affected is that one guy. Which is honestly another thing this movie drops the ball on, because the word culture implies a group of people, but really we only ever see one person who is in favor of what's happening to Mason Stone. Everyone else seems either ambivalent towards it or actively against it. Even the newscaster rolls his eyes when he cuts to a video that one person made calling for a boycott of Stone.
Social media has been ablaze all day with calls for Stone's immediate boycott. Here's just one of dozens of videos from a local activist.
I would say that the activist is the closest this movie gets to something that kinda lands, because I at the very least get what they're going for with her. Even if Victoria Jackson plays her a smidge over the top.
One of the disgusting legacies of the fascist patriarchal agenda pushed against us by that finely chiseled specimen of a male human, Mason Stone, is the brazen attempt to normalize force with a deadly weapon. We cannot sit by while lives are at stake. Now is the time to boycott Stone. We need to pass comprehensive legislation to get weapons of war out of the hands of violent, anti-animal pigs!
Still, if you actually try to parse out what the activist is saying, which frankly I don't think that most of the audience would bother to do, then this part only serves to show that this movie knows it doesn't really have a leg to stand on. She's basically calling for a boycott of Mason Stone because he's promoting gun culture. And it's like, if they wanted to make this about guns, then fucking make it about guns. If they had set this video in a Starbucks and made Mason Stone a guy who was practicing open carry, then I think that would have had a lot more bite to it. Because if a celebrity did that in the real world, that probably would get them in a lot of hot water. Rightfully so, I would argue. That's crazy person behavior, but the people behind this would absolutely act like any outcry towards such a thing was ridiculous. So if they believe that, they should have no problem using it as a ridiculous situation for their movie. Instead, they very consciously depict him as hunting, because they know that that will make him seem a lot more sane and make any reaction towards him seem a lot more unreasonable as a result. And then to further muddy things up, they have him saying a bunch of shit about supporting the troops and America and Jesus to make it seem like that's what people would be mad about, even though, like, even in their own goddamn movie, the crazy liberal lady doesn't say shit about it. It's all designed to make them seem like these sweet innocent victims while making the people that oppose them seem like these braying lunatics, and it's frustrating. Especially because the braying lunatics in question kind of have a point. I choose my words pretty carefully on here because I'm really not trying to offend anyone. But that said, truly, from the bottom of my heart, fuck any American who still opposes gun control. We are the only country where this shit happens, and something needs to change. And I say that as someone who is not as anti-gun as I'm sure a lot of you are assuming right now. I've lived in cities my whole life and have never really felt the need for a gun, but the second I set foot in a rural area and feel how isolated things can get, I totally understand why people might want one to give themselves a little peace of mind. But if that's the case, then I feel like you probably only need one, and that one does not need to be an automatic weapon capable of mowing down an entire movie theater, and maybe before you can own that one, you should go through some sort of certification process. These are complex issues, but the people behind this movie don't want to acknowledge valid criticisms, even though they are aware enough of those criticisms to actively sidestep them. And that's because this isn't about trying to make things better for them. This is honestly just a game to these people at this point. They've picked their team, and anyone who opposes that team is the enemy. This movie talks about supporting the troops a lot, to the point that while I was watching it, I started doing research into times when the right did not do that, but then I stopped pretty quickly, because even though it's not hard to find examples, I didn't really see the point. These people do not care if they're hypocrites. Nothing you can show them will change their mind, because their mind's already made up. They have decided that they are the side that supports the troops, and so anyone who they agree with must also support the troops even when they don't, and anyone who disagrees with them on any level is doing so to actively piss on the grave of everyone buried in Arlington Cemetery. And honestly, I take offense to that. I do support the troops. I think that anyone who has gone through shit like that overseas should absolutely be taken care of here at home. Granted, my version of supporting the troops does not include supporting the wars they fight in, and I think maybe supporting the troops means recognizing how difficult being a troop is and providing better social programs and other options for public service so that nobody is ever forced to become a troop and risk their lives because they feel like they have no better options. But I don't think that the people screaming "support our troops" ever really leave room for that sort of nuance. Also, we should not be allowed to recruit people at high schools. What the fuck is that shit? I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm like 30 seconds into this movie at this point. Given how long I've been ranting about this whole Mason Stone cancellation, a lot of you have probably assumed that this movie is about Mason Stone in some way, but no. He's in like 3 scenes. If you'll remember back to the before time when we were in a prison, there was a guy in the background playing the ukulele, and that's our actual protagonist. His name is Nick, and I only remember that because it's clearly supposed to be a reference to Saint Nick, because this movie is not very creative.
Come on, Nick, you're killing me with that little guitar. How'd you even get that in here?
It's a ukulele, Mari, and it keeps the big guy calm.
Nick, you do this again, I'm not letting you out.
I didn't ask you to.
I didn't realize perps got to bring in musical instruments.
Oh, come on, you know he's not a real perp.
That man right there is Nick's father, who also happens to be the chief of police. And this is one of many points during this movie where I thought, like, make it make sense, because he's treated like this caring dad looking after his son who's going through a hard time, but he's also kind of crooked. He is a police chief who is using his authority to get his son out of jail without any consequences. I've unfortunately seen enough episodes of Hannity to know that my boy Sean could rant for weeks on end about such behaviors if they were being done by someone he disagreed with. This is basically just Hunter Biden on a smaller scale. And don't even get me started on the fact that this movie is targeted at the sorts of people who would spend hours on end railing against spoiled, lazy, entitled millennials, but they don't seem to have any problem when their protagonist is just given a job by his dad.
And there's one more thing. There's a condition.
Okay. What is it?
You're getting a job.
Dad. No, I've tried to get a job. It's not as easy as it sounds. I'm not saying for everybody with the unemployment crisis, but it's been tough.
Would you stop lying to me? Okay, just stop lying. I took care of it already. Say hello to the great American workforce.
Nick becomes a garbage man, and it's like fine. Everything kind of just works out in that regard. After this scene is the news report I ranted about for a while, and then after that they just kind of cut to Nick being good at his job and his dad being proud of him for turning his life around.
Yes, of course I'm proud of you. Hey, you're proving that anybody can change. Anybody.
Yeah, well, that's easy for you to say. You look like you walked out of a cologne ad.
What an odd thing to say to your father.
Seriously, you think you're going to move up in the company?
Oh yeah, but I'm just climbing the corporate ladder like everyone else, one dirty mattress at a time.
But it was only meant to be a stopgap job for you. You understand that, right?
I just got the job.
Well, got is, I would say that's a bit of an overstatement.
What is it? What do you want from me?
Nick, we both know you have more to offer than this.
The way the dad talks about Nick's job is weird for a bunch of reasons. First and foremost, Nick has only been at it for like a week. Give him a second to breathe. Also, telling him that he has more to offer is kind of obnoxious because, he's a garbage man. There are very few jobs I can think of that are more impactful than that. With the holidays coming up, we are about to see what the world looks like when garbage collectors don't do their job. And, well, it's worse. It's a lot worse than when they do it. I appreciate them very much. There is nothing shittier to me than when someone looks at someone else's job and tries to shame it for not being fancy enough. Nobody should ever feel bad for putting in an honest day's work, so I feel like the dad can just go fuck himself on this one. Especially when he is the one who forced Nick to take this job. If he thought being a garbage man was so beneath him, then he should have given him something else to do. Although frankly, based on what we learn about Nick in this scene, I feel like this job isn't as beneath him as the movie wants us to believe.
You need to come to church.
Don't start that again.
Yes, I am. I'm going to start that again. It would do you some good, son. Shoot, you might even meet somebody. It's the holidays, Nick.
Oh,
I mean, who doesn't go to church around Christmas time? Come on.
Yeah. You know what, you're right. A garbage man with multiple felonies and a suspended driver's license? What church girl could resist?
I'm not sure what felonies he committed, but it kind of sounds to me like he should consider himself lucky to be a garbage man. And for the record, that's not me saying that people with felonies shouldn't be allowed to move up in the world. They get to change and grow just like the rest of us. I mean, Nick hasn't. He was being bailed out of jail by his dad like a week ago, but under normal circumstances, people should be allowed to leave the past in the past. Unfortunately, though, they don't always get the opportunity to do so, and as best as I can tell, that's the way that people like Sean Hannity like it. If you had told me before I watched this that a movie he produced featured an alcoholic convict whose father gave him a job, I would not have assumed that that character would be the protagonist. The way this movie portrays Nick is indicative of a tendency that I've noticed in a lot of conservatives, which is this weird belief that for some reason, their immediate world is the exception to the rule. I feel like it's not uncommon to see a conservative who has a gay sister they love, but still thinks that gay people are evil and destroying the country. Or maybe they know someone who's an addict that they want to help, but they have absolutely no sympathy for addicts that they see on the news. On paper, Nick is everything that these people hate, but the movie is able to make the audience like him simply by giving him a face. And also, if I had to guess, it probably doesn't hurt things that that face is white. It spends so much time hammering home the point that Nick is more than just a garbage man with felonies that it honestly leaves a bad taste in my mouth, because it feels like the implication there is that for other garbage men and other people with felonies, that's not the case. Unsurprisingly, the main way that they humanize him is by making him a veteran.
Look, at this point, it's pretty clear that I'm not changing the world. Okay, much less Pativa.
No. That is not you talking. Okay, that's that other guy. That other guy that came back. He snuck back from Bagram in your boots, but you got rid of him, right?
Yeah, that doesn't mean he's not waiting around the corner hoping I screw up again.
How many times do I have to say this to you, son? Nobody blames you for crashing on re-entry. Nobody.
Seriously, Nick, your dad has told you to forgive yourself. I don't know why you still insist on having PTSD. The movie is meant to be light and airy, so the fact that they make Nick a veteran feels like a disservice to veterans, because they can't really portray the reality of his situation in any meaningful way. And this is made all the more frustrating by the fact that the movie obviously glosses over how stupid the war was, and the fact that a lot of what happened to people like Nick was totally avoidable, but they don't gloss over it enough that it's not all I can think about while watching this scene.
Father and son, both serving in the same war and nearly 20 years apart. How wild is that, huh?
Haha, yeah! Crazy! The next morning, Nick gets a call from his partner telling him that they have a special job. They head to a warehouse where they find hundreds and hundreds of boxes that they're supposed to take to a landfill. And if you were wondering how all that cancel culture shit from earlier tied into the movie, it's this.
What is it?
It's Silver Saturn. The rare re-release. The original had those fire and wrist rockets, but kids kept putting each other's eyes out, which I guess parents found problematic. Let me see.
Does the movie think that that's not problematic? I get that we disagree on a lot of things, but I kind of assumed that we were all on the same page when it came to children's eye safety. But yeah, now that Mason Stone has been canceled, all of his action figures that were supposed to be on the shelves for Christmas are instead being trashed. And as a garbage man, it's Nick's job to take them to the dump.
It is a sin if these gotta go to the landfill.
Yeah, especially if it's as valuable as you say they are.
As valuable. If you sold every one of these figs for like 100, heck, $50, you'd be set for life, son.
You know, it's all because some college kid on the internet got triggered or something.
Alright, I'm just gonna gloss over the irony of having a veteran with PTSD complain about people being triggered, and instead focus on the fact that this movie does not seem to understand basic economics. I feel like if these toys are currently valuable, that is only because they were taken off the market. You could maybe sell one or two of them for an elevated price, but were you to try and sell all of them, they would stop being rare collectibles and go back to being very cheap looking action figures that are absolutely not worth $50. And this is a pretty consistent theme in this movie. It seems to view business in a way that doesn't entirely feel rooted in reality. Later on, we get some scenes set in the boardroom of the toy company that made the action figures, and they are baffling.
This Mason Stone story will not go away.
These things blow over, you know? Be thankful he didn't do anything really bad.
He didn't do anything at all.
It doesn't matter, Marty. Not anymore. The perception is he did. Once the accusations go flying online, we all have to cover our own.
In case you guys can't make out that sign in the background, the toy company's name is Cashboro, which is clearly meant to be a clever takedown of Hasbro, although when I first watched this movie, I wasn't entirely sure why that would be. I googled Hasbro plus cancel culture, and based on the results, the best guess I could come up with is that the movie is still mad at them for making Mr. Potato Head non-binary, and if that's the case, then whatever point they're trying to make here becomes even more muddy than I thought imaginable. The way the movie portrays them, Cashboro is kind of just a bunch of cowards. The CEO doesn't want to stop selling Mason Stone toys, he only does it to protect the company. He knows in his heart that Mason Stone didn't do anything wrong, but he's not willing to stand up and do what's right because everyone around him is saying that there'll be a boycott if he does. And if this company is indeed supposed to be a stand-in for Hasbro, which it very clearly is, then it's strange that this is the route that this conservative movie would take, because in real life, it was the conservatives doing the boycotting. Watching this part, I honestly started to get the sense that the people making it weren't even sure what they were mad about anymore.
When is this cancel culture nonsense gonna stop?
They don't actually like that term anymore. They're calling it accountability culture.
Accountability culture. Accountability is when there is proof you did something wrong.
I'm not sure you can say that anymore, boss.
I don't know that that's true. If anything, accountability is taking responsibility for yourself even if there isn't proof. Although that said, what the fuck does he mean by proof? Mason Stone got canceled for a video that we all saw. It's clearly meant to be stupid that he got in trouble for doing what he did, but I don't think that whether or not he did it was ever in question.
We used to have a thing called due process. Now, Finn, you're my lead counsel. Are they teaching that in law school still, that you're innocent until proven guilty?
Well, Marty, things are different now, okay? I don't agree with it either, but we need to roll with the tide here or they're gonna boycott us. Again.
As far as I know, Mason Stone isn't having any legal actions filed against him, so I don't really know what that has to do with anything. I agree that nobody should crucify someone without knowing the full story, although, again, in this situation they do because they're reacting to a video that they saw. But if for some reason people do make snap judgments on someone, that is not the same thing as robbing them of due process. Honestly, it's kind of annoying that the CEO would be the one complaining about due process, because in this court of public opinion, he is the closest thing there is to a judge. If he thinks that Mason Stone shouldn't get his toys pulled off the shelf, then all he needs to do is not pull his toys off the shelf. It kind of feels like the movie is just throwing around a bunch of buzzwords guaranteed to make the audience mad to try and make things feel more complicated than they are, because it wants to hide the fact that the situation at hand is actually pretty simple. Like everything else in business, this really just boils down to money.
Finn's right, boss. We gotta take care of the company. It's just good business.
Good business. We're taking a bath $1 million worth of product. How is that good for any business?
By being sensitive to the prevailing culture.
Sensitive to the prevailing culture. Maybe we should market a line of pretty cardboard boxes and call them safe spaces.
Not your worst idea, boss. Can you get that going?
Basically, in this world, what Mason Stone did was offensive enough to enough people that it's worth millions of dollars to this company to cut ties with him. That's basically all there is to it. Based on every piece of information this movie gives us, his toys are not destined to be huge sellers, which is weird because the way the movie treats them, they are this amazing gold mine that everyone wants to get their hands on. This starts with collectors. For whatever reason, Nick's partner is a huge fan of toy streamers, and he tells Nick that by some weird coincidence, the biggest influencer in the space also happens to live in the same small town where the movie is set. He's played by a former WWE wrestler named Hornswoggle, and his most notable character trait is that he keeps saying that things he likes make him jiggle like Jello, which I wasn't really a fan of.
This is serious treasure here, people. You don't find Dig It Dog collectibles in this condition at all anymore. And if you do, they're fake. This would get me huge bucks on that antique show from that old British guy. And then it would make me jiggle like jelly.
Nick organizes a meeting with him and ends up selling him one of the toys for a few $100, and it's not really that important to the plot. Really, the only reason I'm even mentioning it is to point out the fact that he hosts his stream on Rumble, the same place that this movie was released, and it leads me to believe that part of the reason for his inclusion was to try and convince people to start making content for their platform.
And this was an exclusive mail-away item with the regionally released cereal Tuscaloosa Twists, which was just as awful.
Okay, wait, first, people watch this?
Bunch of people. Look at the views.
Although if that is their goal, then I feel like it might be a bit of an uphill battle, because I don't know that the audience here is particularly tech savvy. And I say that because when I went to watch Jingle Smells, I saw that the only other video on the channel hosting it was a tutorial for how to watch Jingle Smells on your television.
Step 1. Go to jinglesmells.movie and find the big hard-to-miss button that says Order on Rumble. Click that. The Rumble page will load. Click Buy Access and then enter your credit card information and hit Submit Payment.
Of course, as the movie made very clear, Nick is special, so obviously he's gonna use his new windfall for more than just personal gain. He's gonna give back. On his way home, Nick sees a little boy named Silas trying to fix his bike, and so he stops to help him.
I just want to make sure that you're not in any danger or anything, okay?
You're not gonna tell, are you?
Well, that kind of depends on what you're going to say. There's rules.
Some little girls up at the park were throwing rocks at me. One hit my chain and the bats were broken.
Seriously? They're throwing rocks? What is this, the West Bank?
Fuck this movie.
It's awful. Do you live near here?
Yeah, over there on Rice Street. They were calling me Right Rat.
Why would they do that?
Because everybody on Rice Street is poor.
These girls sound like fucking monsters. Jesus Christ. And they actually only get worse from there. They show up and start bullying Silas some more, and then when Nick steps in to defend them, they start bullying him too.
Well, you going right back? Hurry back to your little hole in the wall.
Take it easy, all right? What's wrong with you kids?
Nobody was talking to you, trash panda.
Trash panda?
Honestly, when you're saying it to a garbage man, Trash Panda sounds more like a nice pet name than an insult. I'm not gonna lie, I feel like the girls who were just throwing rocks at a kid for being poor should have been able to come up with something a little bit more biting. Still, these girls are nothing if not vile, so that's not the only insult they hurl our protagonist's way. They also call him Jingle Smells. On account of how smelly he is. Also, I assume because he's wearing a Santa hat in this scene. It's actually pretty clever. Nick and Silas get to talking, and Silas tells Nick that his family is so poor that he's never gotten a proper Christmas gift. And being the special guy with more to offer, who also happens to have a warehouse full of abandoned children's toys that he is, Nick decides to change that.
Mama? Silas, what is it? I need to get ready for work.
Did you give me a present?
Oh, baby, I'm sorry. I told you we can't really What's that?
It's a present for me. Wow, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Thank you, Mama.
Silas, I didn't get this for you.
Then who? Santa? It must have been Santa.
And this is where the movie starts to lose me a little bit, because this is treated like this great Christmas miracle, but I feel like if I were that boy's mother and I saw my son get a gift from someone I didn't know dropped off directly on our front doorstep, I would be concerned. first and foremost. And I feel like Nick knows that he's being a little bit creepy because he doesn't actually sign his own name, he signs it from Jingle Smells, which is why this movie is called Jingle Smells. Actually, did I ever say that it was called Jingle Smells? It's called Jingle Smells. Thrilled by his gift, Silas finds Nick so he can thank him.
That toy was awesome.
Oh, hey, no, we don't talk about that out loud, okay?
Okay, but why?
Just because it's between me and you know, and the big guy.
The president?
No, not him. Don't go near him.
It's okay. Your secret's safe with me. Besides, I don't want to make anybody else feel bad.
What do you mean?
A lot of kids on the block probably won't be getting much for Christmas. I don't want them to think Santa got me something and not them.
And what Silas just said there is a lot more fucked up than you realize for reasons that I will go into a little bit later. So stay tuned. Hearing that there are a whole bunch of other kids in Silas's position and still having a warehouse full of toys at his disposal, Nick decides to keep spreading Christmas cheer. Most of this movie is about Nick taking toys from the warehouse and giving them to poor kids for Christmas, but seeing as most of that portion of the movie is not particularly interesting, I'm not really going to go into too much detail about it. Basically, all you need to know is that Jingle Smells becomes something of a folk hero. His vigilante giving spree is such a big deal that it makes it all the way up to the big man himself.
Quick update for all of you that are following the Mason Stone Jingle Smells drama. All we know right now is Jingle Smells appears to be a garbage man from a small town in New Mexico. Well, whoever you are, thank you for bringing smiles to kids' faces and for keeping the streets clean.
The movie acts like what Nick is doing is the greatest act of charity since whatever Jesus did to become famous, and there's honestly something kind of gross about it to me, because ultimately all he's really doing is giving trash to poor children. Also, not for nothing, but there are all sorts of wonderful charities designed to make sure underprivileged kids get Christmas gifts that weren't meant for a landfill, and the news does not often cover them. But whatever, for some reason, Jingle Smells fever sweeps the nation, and this eventually attracts the attention of the Cashboro Corporation, who terminates their contract with Nick's company because they suspect that somebody working there has been stealing action figures. Which they have been, so that's fair. Nick is left with the few toys he took before he got locked out of the warehouse, and initially he was planning on selling them for a huge profit, but then Silas tells him that he should instead bring them to a bunch of sick kids in the hospital who Santa won't be able to visit this year because there's apparently a snowstorm coming, even though based on the clothes everyone is wearing in this scene, it is currently a balmy 62 degrees outside. Not sure what to do in this situation, Nick goes to church to talk it over with God, because of course he does.
I have a decision to make, so I actually forgot to do this.
It's just like that.
Troubadour? What are you doing here?
Well, you're probably surprised to see that your dad's tips don't pay all of my bills.
Okay, first of all, why is that church so empty? This is supposed to be Christmas Eve. That would be like showing a deserted mall on Black Friday. Also, for those curious, that troubadour guy he's talking to right now is someone we've met before. There's this running gag throughout the movie where he's in the background singing Christmas carols, and then Nick tells his dad to tip him. I just didn't bring it up because it's not particularly interesting. And I'm not even going to try and pretend like there's a surprise here. That is a larger man with white hair and a beard in a Christmas movie. He obviously turns out to be Santa Claus. Which is honestly fucked up for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, remember earlier when Silas talked about Santa skipping over the houses of poor kids? That was happening in a world where Santa exists. If the movie explains why this is, I missed it, and I feel like it really speaks to the way certain conservatives view the world, that they have created a scenario where magic exists. And even still, the best hope that poor people have for a Merry Christmas is a guy who is giving them stolen garbage. Also, I have no problem being disrespectful to Christians. The case could be made that I have an entire series devoted to doing just that, but even by my standards, this feels fairly disrespectful to Christians. He went into church to pray to God and ended up having a conversation with Santa instead. I'm not entirely sure which one of the 10 Commandments this scene violates, but I'm fairly certain it's at least one of them. And things get even worse when you consider what they're talking about, because for whatever reason, this is the moment the movie chooses to tie everything back into Nick's PTSD. He gives his long monologue about what he went through in the war and how he struggled coming home, and while I play it for you, I want you guys to remember that this is all being said to Santa Claus.
Yeah, they say that. Until the bombs go off, until the chaos starts. And you see, like, your friends running. And they die. There's warning, there's no reason for it, I'm sorry, you see those kids. You see these little girls and their parents, they just want them to have, like, a free life. Oh, God, I'm so sorry.
That's not your fault, Nick. You're not still at war, are you?
And yeah, Santa eventually convinces Nick to do the right thing by comparing Jingle smells to Jesus.
There's a man that we celebrate this time of year who performed some pretty controversial miracles himself. And he too was accused of breaking the law.
And then his elves show up and he disappears into thin air. Nick brings his toys to the hospital, and waiting for him there are a bunch of cops who arrest him. I think. I don't know. If you'll remember, his dad is the chief of police, so the stakes here never feel particularly high, but I do think that some form of legal action is taken against him. If he does get arrested, he doesn't get taken to jail, and instead he gets taken to the warehouse that the action figures are being stored in, where the CEO of Cashboro tells the cops to arrest him. I don't know. This movie's not particularly complicated, but it is very confusing at points. Before whatever is supposed to happen can happen, though, Mason Stone comes down and gives the CEO a piece of his mind.
You can't arrest him! Are you really gonna send a guy to jail for giving kids Christmas?
Mace.
I'm disappointed in you, Marty.
Disappointed?
He stole products from our warehouse.
Products that you were sending to the dump. You were throwing me away, weren't you, Marty?
Mace, my back was against the wall, and the country had turned against you anyway, pal.
Misguided snowflakes, I can handle. But you, Marty, you turned your back on me, and it hurt. Right here, Marty.
And I hate agreeing with this movie on literally any level, but the dude kind of has a point there. There are a lot of characters that I did not care for in this movie, but without question, the worst one of all was the CEO. And It's not because I disagreed with him politically or because Eric Roberts kind of bums me out. It was because he was a whiny little wiener. Nothing he does here makes an ounce of sense to me. He spends the whole movie complaining about cancel culture, even though he is arguably the only person responsible for any actual canceling. He could very easily make everything he wants to happen, but because it will require him to face some amount of consequences, he instead just sits back and grumbles the whole time. And honestly, I think it's to the movie's credit that he ends up being the person that Mason Stone addresses in the big climactic scene at the end, because I feel like if there's an audience stand-in, it's him. I think the audience probably thinks that they're Nick, but I would disagree on that one. This was one of the hardest times I've ever had talking about a movie for this channel, for the mere fact that while the movie has a lot to say, not a lot of it fits together in any coherent way. Truly, the thing I kept thinking about while making this was the fact that this conservative movie centers around a spineless company so worried about a boycott that they're not willing to stand up for what's right, and they named it after a company that was recently on the receiving end of a conservative boycott. That is so insane to me. They are basically saying that boycotting things you disagree with is cancel culture, and cancel culture is bad, while simultaneously reminding everyone that they actively participate in boycotts of things they disagree with. And they do it without a single ounce of irony. I said earlier that these sorts of people don't care if you call them hypocrites, but that doesn't change the fact that they are still hypocrites. So I spent this whole movie trying to find something stable to stand on, only to have the ground shift under my feet the second I started to formulate a thought. I did my best to try and find some through line in their logic that I could latch onto, and really the best that I could come up with is that they want what they want. I say this as a stupid lefty cuck, so maybe I'm just biased, but it seems to me that the main thing that separates the left from the right is that the former views things as they are, while the latter views things as they want them to be. They have a certain view of the world they live in, and they want to preserve it, so anything that comes along to challenge it, they view as a threat. I feel like they look at what they perceive as cancel culture and think, I'll have to change who I am, or it could happen to me, and they don't like that, so they start to lash out. And I'm not gonna lie, I get it. Everything that I'm saying right now, I'm saying as somebody who could probably be canceled if anyone cared enough to actually do it. I've talked about it on the channel before, but I spent a large portion of my life being a massive asshole. I've crossed many lines before, either because I was trying to be funny, or because I didn't recognize how my actions could affect other people, or because I was just plain stupid. Often it was all three at once. I've looked back at who I've been in my life and thought, like, wow, that dude sucked way too many times to think that if the rest of you were able to get a glimpse at him, you wouldn't feel the same way. And truly, the idea that that could happen does scare me. There's nothing I can do about my past, so it does sometimes feel like it's just lingering there, waiting to pounce on me. But like, I don't know, if that does happen and people decide that their opinion of me has changed, then I really hope that they're allowed to act on that, because the alternative is way worse. And that's the thing that I really don't get about the anti-cancel culture crowd. Like, what do they want to happen? Ultimately, all that's going on here is that people are expressing their opinions, and I don't really know how you police that. For as many times as I've heard people equate cancel culture to fascism, it really feels like the only way to combat it in the way that they seem to want would be through fascism. And that's the funny thing about all of this. Even though I do think that it's rooted in them fearing that the world isn't the world that they want, cancel culture is kind of just the end game of the world that they seem to want. If this movie does one thing right, it's that it provides a really good example of the ultimate irony here. And that's that everything they're complaining about is just capitalism. All of the so-called canceling that happened in boardrooms. It was people choosing where to spend their dollars and companies responding to try their best to minimize losses. And you know, when you think about things like that, you might even argue that if you're truly against cancel culture, the best way to combat it would be to create better safety nets so that if someone lost their source of income because their audience turned on them, that wouldn't be a potential death sentence. But I don't think that most of the people on the right would even be willing to consider that. Like, I don't think that the anti-cancel culture crowd is actually interested in making a world where shit like this isn't an issue. What they want is for the world to already be like that, even though it's not. Which is honestly where this whole way of thinking starts to piss me off the most. There's just something so lazy about it. The movie begins with Sean Hannity saying that it's official, Mason Stone has been canceled. And from there, people kind of just accept it and complain about it, but they don't really ever do anything about it. Everyone in this movie seems like they want to continue to support the dude, so I have no idea why they don't. I think that's what you're supposed to do. When somebody does something cancelable, it's on all of us to listen to what happened and engage with it and form an opinion. And once you do that, if someone comes along to disagree with you, I think you either need to defend your convictions or listen to what they have to say and let your opinion evolve. And that goes for people on both sides. I think that if the left does have a canceling problem, it's a tendency to see that people think someone is bad now and then just kind of be like, all right, I guess I can't like him anymore. And it's like, no, you absolutely can. If you think someone is worth supporting, then you are absolutely allowed to support them. You just can't expect everyone else to agree with you. Everyone is entitled to look at the world and form their own opinions, and that can get messy sometimes. But frankly, I wouldn't want it any other way. At the end of the day, all we can do is choose where we spend our dollars. And the more I think about it like that, the more I actually do kind of regret spending mine on this movie. And yeah, that's my video. Please like and subscribe and share and comment and watch my old videos if you're new and you like this. Everything else I've ever made is basically just the same as this, but with slightly different words. Also, if you have some extra dollars and would like to support me financially, please consider checking out my Patreon or giving me a super thanks, which, speaking of, I have some super thanks that I need to super thanks back. Let me see if I can find them. I probably should have done this before I started talking, but as I'm sure many of you could tell by now, I'm not particularly smart. Where is this? Content? Comments. I go comments, and then I go from super thanks. I responded, apply, and it was... Okay, so thank you to Angel Barrera 3890, Aaron M 9576, Eddie Amazon, Lori Wild 3977, Alex St. Alex Drojny 6705. I am very bad at reading. Rachel 935108. Thank you, Rachel. It is very funny to me because I feel like I'm really bad at reading, and I'm especially bad at reading numbers. So reading people's usernames is like my nightmare, but I have to do it every video. Thank you to Larna Dennis, no numbers there. And yes, I am, please. Thank you guys all so much. Means the world to me for your support. And also, if you're just watching it, it also means the world for me to support. You don't need to give me money. This is a bonus. It means a lot, but like, don't feel obligated, obviously. Not that you would, but sometimes people do, and it's like, don't feel bad if you don't. I'm rambling. I don't know. But yeah, thank you guys for hanging out with me this year. It's probably my last video of the year. So thank you for a great 2023, and I'm excited for 2024. I have a lot of fun stuff planned. So no, I don't. That was a lie. Maybe by the next time you see me, I'll have some fun stuff planned, but yeah, that was a terrible way to end the year. Whatever. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. Still one last little bit of Willie in 2023. It's the part where the patron's names scroll and I pose for a thumbnail. And so for this one, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I feel like I might try something different. I might just have it say cancel culture, because that's kind of evocative. And so maybe I'll react to like cancel culture, like cancel culture. People not liking racism. Grrr. How dare they? So I guess if I say cancel culture, because I don't want people thinking that I am like, I'm not pro cancel culture, but like I'm not like a cancel culture person. I don't want people thinking, so I need to like make it seem obvious that I'm not really angry. So grrr. Grrr. Yeah, maybe that's just like a big baby, like I don't like cancel culture. It's bad. It's making me, I can't say all the slurs I want to say. Even though I can, it's just I might face consequences. Cancel culture. That would be like a good, everyone, I don't know. If you guys are the sort of people who like to make GIFs, one of my goals in life is now to become a reaction GIF, and I feel like that one would have been good. Cancel culture. I can think of a lot of things that I would use that for. And then in case I change my mind on how I want to do this, I might just kind of just be like, oh god, this is so stupid. Oh god. Roll my eyes. Why? Why is this still a thing that we're not that there shouldn't be a conversation, but the conversations being had are really stupid. Excuse me. All right, that's 2024. Ended on a strong note.